Okay. Wallace, Faircloth, and I were assigned Chapter 7, the flow of the lesson, the place of feedback. Mr. Welch provided much feedback on the assignments we have completed. I can't admit that initially the criticism or correctiveness, however you choose to accept it, it felt attacking, as if I was being picked on, mainly because I've never had an educational model point out negative aspects of my work. On the contrary, I've been praised a lot by much of my work. Well, about much of my work, but I am becoming more appreciative of his feedback because it tells me areas where I need improvement. He does not just provide a letter grade, which is awesome, because that 92% A that I received last semester, it didn't show me what I did wrong. True enough, it did let me know that I provided the incorrect response, but I didn't get any feedback on areas where I needed to improve, other than an implication that I needed to study more. So, as Hattie has previously mentioned, feedback is a key element of learning and teaching. People have a keen interest in knowing how they're doing, if they're doing this correctly, or how can they do it better. The purpose of feedback is not to target mistakes, errors, or negative aspects of the individual or group. Feedback is needed for the acknowledgement of those errors to allow and provide opportunities for improvement. It's equally important to know that feedback may not be universally effective across different cultures. Hattie discussed the effect of feedback from individualist cultures as well as collectivist cultures. He suggests that individualist cultures prefer direct feedback that is self-related and individualized. There is the expectation that people will say what is on their mind and be upfront and direct about it. There will not be any, as you would say, beating around the bush. In collectivist cultures, people are more likely to use a more indirect form of communication to elicit feedback. The feedback is less self-focused and more group-focused. Hattie also suggests that collectivist students accept self-corrective criticism for the good and improvement of the whole group. These students place the needs of the group above their own desires and motivations. Individualist students or individualist cultured students are more likely to engage in self-helping strategies because they aim to gain success and status to achieve outcomes. Individualist cultures view the self as being more important, and success or failure is determined by that person. Feedback given to members of an individualist culture is targeted or is geared towards one person who is then responsible for their own actions. Feedback given to members of collectivist cultures is shared by the group who accepts responsibility for each other's actions. So asking students about feedback, there is not an assessment or a measure to get students' attitudes about feedback. But Anna B. Hemingway wrote an article entitled "How Students' Gratitude for Feedback Can Identify the Right Attitude for Success." And in her research, she discovered, as you probably would expect, that some students resist and often resent receiving criticism or feedback, while others are grateful for the suggestions that provide help and improvement. So according to her study, as well as Hattie, feedback is considered most effective when the criticism addresses the work and not the personal characteristics of that person. The individual's perception of the feedback affects the intended message of the criticism and or confirmation, correctness, however you choose to view it. Hattie cited Higgins et al., who wrote an article in 2001, who found that students perceive feedback negatively if it doesn't provide helpful information that leads to successful outcomes, if the feedback provided is too impersonal, if the feedback isn't specific, and if the feedback has an informal connotation. It is not enough to only tell the person or the student what they're doing wrong, but one must also provide an explanation and provide improvement for future success. Let's briefly discuss the power of feedback from peers. Some students lack the ability to give feedback due to owning insufficient knowledge of subject matters, yet Hattie suggests that 80% of feedback comes from peers. So since peer feedback has so much influence on uh, has so much influence on individuals, it is important to provide interventions and guide that fosters correct and appropriate peer feedback. It is important for teachers to acknowledge the effect of peer feedback and provide support to assist with relaying factual and critical messages. Um, Hattie discussed the use of prompts. Basically, the instructor sets the stage for meaningful peer-to-peer feedback or peer-to-peer interactions. Students may veer away from critiquing one another in a group setting due to a fear of potential social outcasting or social isolation, but by providing guidance and assistance to elicit helpful and positive scrutiny could lead to better outcomes. Hattie suggests prompts can be conceived as aids for cognitive engagement, helping students to engage in self-talk, and also helps the students. It also helps students figure out, what to do and what to say next. There is no discussion in the text about grades or marking. I began to wonder whether or not grades could be considered a method of feedback. We all know that Mr. Welch does not give markings on assignments, but he provides suggestions for correctiveness to get us where we need to be instead of and putting little focus on where we are now. Hattie quotes Kahn, I think his name, 2006, who noted, "Never mark students while they are still learning. Students see the mark so often as the end of learning." The major reasons relating to the nature and structure of the pieces of work that are graded is that they are the outputs of lessons, and learning is more likely to occur during rather than after the learning is finished. So to me, the real knowledge, it doesn't lie in the grade, but more so in the changes in the student learning behaviors and the willingness to understand the messages to build towards successful learning outcomes.